Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sticking around for our session, gift versus sponsored project. I was the program project part confused. I am Christina Lawrence. I'm a research administration manager over in OSP. I support Team 6. We oversee among a few departments, but our largest one is being infectious diseases. I've been with OSP for about 3.5 years.
Hey everybody, I'm Adam Decatur. I'm a sponsored programs officer in Team 5, with Team 5. I've been with the university for going on 6 years now, almost 6 years. I've been with the Office of Sponsored Programs, previously OSR, for a little bit more than, I believe, 2 years now.
All right, just as an overview today, what we plan to go over, we're going to define what's a gift, what's a sponsored project, why certain aspects of why it may be a gift, certain aspects in terms and conditions and characteristics of why it may be a sponsored project. Some special considerations. Not always does everything fit into one box or the other. Sometimes we are putting a square peg into a round hole. So some special considerations when coming across those. Some examples, some case studies that we've come across, as well as some resources that you can access after.
There we go. All right, so what is a gift? Generally, a gift is a voluntary and irrevocable transfer of money, services, or property. So basically a no strings attached donation, if you will, to a research cause. There's no expectation of reporting or return of the gift when it's delivered, and it does not have any real, requirements as far as financial reporting on progress. We don't owe anything back to the gifter once we're gifted funds.
For sponsored projects, those can include grants, contracts, cooperative agreements, and they are typically almost always externally funded with a statement of work. So a scope of work, a set of objectives. So what would be considered aims. It provides a basis for sponsor expectations that the sponsor is giving us money and they expect something in return. It's enforceable by law. All contracts are enforceable by law. They're subject to termination, or if a PI leaves, or the PI can no longer do continue on to the project, those funds need to be returned back to the sponsor for any reason. Doesn't have to necessarily be that, but for any reason that those remaining funds need to be returned. A sponsor and a recipient exchange of items that have economic value, including knowledge, IP, anything that there is an exchange is usually going to be a sponsored project.
Okay, so flipping back to gifts, gifts, again, do not require a whole lot of reporting. You're not going to have, a financial report. You're not going to have a budget report. Your gifter is not going to receive like a line item budget or anything like that. It's very, very minimal. If they request, that basically they're only really going to request a status update. They're going to ask you, how's it going with the money we gave you? And that's pretty much, that's where the line is drawn as far as reporting back on gifts. They are general use funds. So not, specific where a private or a sponsored project may be, but, if somebody wants to upgrade a building, if they want to give funds for the ability to hire on more students, or if they want it to be used, specifically for, I should not say specifically, if they want it to be used for furthering the, the general goal of whatever research may be taking place. So yes, this does include, fellowships or scholarships. External funds may be a gift if there's no sponsored project indicators, which we're going to get into sponsored project indicators pretty specifically here.
All right, what is a sponsored project on the sponsor side? Sponsor could be a government entity, federal, state, or local, or includes governmental flow through funds. So if the NIH is funding another university, funding money to us, That is what the flow through funds would be. Excuse me, awarded funds through a competitive bid process, an RFP, a funding opportunity, RFA, those types of scenarios. Usually a sponsored project, maybe not always, but most of the time all the time a sponsored project is going to go through the IPF process. Sometimes we get gifts through those processes as well. We determine that it's not a sponsored project, and then we would turn it over to another entity, which we will get to in a bit. It's if the sponsor has issued a contract, cooperative agreement, consortium agreement, subcontract, or purchase order. Funds a project for a specific scope of work, product, service, or other deliverables. Like Adam said, a gift, they can give money to further specific research, but not for like a specific scope of work.
All right, terms and conditions. This is the big red flag where, you know, if you receive money and you think it's a gift, and then terms and conditions start flowing down, it is not a gift, you know, just in simple terms. So to get into it, so publication restrictions, you know, if they say, well, we're going to give you this money, but we don't really want you talking about your findings on the research that you've done, you know, until we review it, that's a sponsored project. That is no longer a gift. So requiring the transfer, conveyance of rights for tangible or intangible, or tangible, you know, or intangible property, whether that's equipment, patents, trademarks, trade secrets. If there are terms surrounding, you know, what you can do with the equipment that you may be purchasing with quote unquote gift funds, or if there's any sort of trademark associated with anything that you're doing, you know, you can't call that a gift. That's not a gift. That's going to end up coming to us as a sponsored project. We have to kind of review that we have to review that for compliance and make sure that, you know, we're not stepping on any toes with that money. Requiring an audit of facilities or other university resources. If somebody gives you funds and they say, well, you can spend this, but we want to make sure that your lab is up to date, that's a sponsored project. You've got to come through us for that. And then so down at the bottom here, we've got some more terms and conditions, and that's just, you know, stipulating compliance with federal or state regulations, unallowable costs, subcontracting, insurance, indemnification, confidential information, modifications, termination, penalties, or applicable law. Any of this comes up in any form. Despite what the sponsor has said, if they say, you know, we're going to gift you these funds, but we've got some regulations that you have to follow, that's not a gift. The takeaway here is that, you know, if any of this pops up, it doesn't really matter what the sponsor might say as far as, oh, we want to gift you $100,000, but you got to see your insurance documents. That's a sponsored project. That's going to come to us.
There was an example that was given to us in our conversations with the development office where it was an industry sponsor who wanted to gift us money, and all the terms and conditions, everything that they were doing was fine, except they said, if this PI should leave the university, leave UNC, then you need to return any remaining funds. Try as hard as they could to get that out. They refused. They had to then turn that over as a sponsored project because of that particular one term. Sometimes they try to, you know, we try to may, you know, try to go from shall to must to may, but it can be a simple one word thing that's going to flip it onto the other side. Financial restrictions. This is just kind of reiterating everything that we're saying. Any kind of financial restriction is going to make it a sponsored project. If they are dictating how we use these funds, if we have to provide a line item budget, anything that's itemized, if there's a start or end date to it. I mean, if they're giving money and they say, well, you got to use this in within a year, it's probably not going to be a gift. Indirects. Providing indirects is usually an indication. The return of expended funds for any reason, doesn't matter what the reason is. If there is an expectation that there is that we are to return any unexpended funds, it is going to be a sponsored project. Invoicing, detailed financial reports. Now they can say, hey, how did you spend that money? We gave you $50,000. How did you spend that money? And sometimes they want to report it. They want to, toot their own horn. That is okay. A general statement like we use this money to fund GRAs on a particular project or whatever. We use this fund to open a new lab. That's fine. Those kinds of things. But if they're asking for detailed reports, that's going to be a sponsored project. Funding that's cost reimbursable and contingent upon programmatic or fiscal reporting. Sponsored project. Now, just because a sponsor tells you that it's going to be given to you in a gift doesn't necessarily make it a gift when it comes to us. Recently, I just approved an IPF. Gilead sponsor, an industry partner of a scholarship. They have the scholar program. It wasn't a scholarship, scholar program. And they limit their indirects to 10%. And in their justification for only wanting to pay 10% indirects, they said they are going to formulate this award as a gift and not a grant. Okay, cool, but it's most likely going to be a sponsored project once it's awarded. The department also has to come up with the remaining 45.5% of that indirect. So sometimes it's a sponsor not wanting to pay if you went to the industry contracting one earlier this morning, a lot of times your industry partners don't want to pay that 55.5%. And this is kind of sometimes the way they try to skirt around it. In that case, it can be problematic for a department because, like I said, they do have to make up that funding.
All right, so special considerations. If any of these pop up, this should kind of be your own personal red flag to reach out to somebody about the money that's coming in, whether it's the Office of Sponsored Programs or the Office of Development. If any of these here with funds being used as matching or cost sharing towards a sponsored project, if funds involve human subjects or animal subjects, if there's any potential conflict of interest with the sponsor at all, or if there's a signature required in general, or if a signature required by an authorized university official, or even just a PI signature, in general, we really, really would like you all to reach out to the Office of Sponsored Programs or the Office of Development so that we can make sure, we'd like you to reach out pretty early on so that we can make sure that this is filed correctly as a gift or a sponsored project, because it becomes really messy to reverse that down the road. People's feelings get hurt too, which may be important.
This is the area in which it's the square peg into a round hole. Now, none of these factors mean it's one or the other, but in totality, it might mean one or the other. So if one of these are present, it's something that needs to be looked into a little bit further. We do work closely with the Office of Development. So if there's something we're looking at, we're like, I don't know, then we're going to reach out to our partners over there and we're going to collaborate and we're going to decide where it's best. Neither one of us have an incredibly vested interest in where it goes. We just want it to go to the right place so that those funds can be administered and pass the audit test.
Okay, so we've got here a checklist. This is a draft. This is a work in progress. We don't have this to distribute to you today, but our hope is that once developed, this checklist will be kind of a starting point for anybody who doesn't know whether the funding they're receiving is a gift or a sponsored project. It's our hope that this checklist is going to cover a lot of, or is going to check, a lot of the boxes and help you all make a better informed decision and kind of clear out some of the mud as far as like not being sure whether funds are a gift or sponsored project. Again, this is a draft. This is not being circulated yet, but we are working on this and hope to have this to you in the future.
If anybody has gone onto the website, the sponsor, I think it's gift versus sponsored project or something, the webpage, it's incredibly outdated. And we do intend to have that in the future. At some point, we are a state entity, so we do move a little slow. But our hope is to include this checklist when and if approved to do so as a tool And it would be included on that website, so that everyone can access it, as well as some updated information. I think there's a dead email in there too. So we'll provide some updated emails if anybody should need to reach out. Which, here we go. So gifts are handled out of the Office of Development. Again, there's no terms, conditions, restrictions associated with the funding, limited, if any, financial reporting. Again, if they would like a summary that they want to put a little blurb on their websites, that's fine. If there are any questions and you think that this might be a gift and you want to reach out to the Office of Development, their email is frie@unc.edu. Similarly, if it's a grants sponsor a government entity, I think we're most familiar what grants are, imposes restrictions, detailed deliverables. Our general email address is sponsoredprograms@unc.edu, of course. You could also reach out to your SPS and or their manager, who is assigned to your department. That will, however, if you do use a general email, it'll also get to us at some point.
Yeah.
When in doubt,
Sorry.
when in doubt, please reach out to OSP. We will work in collaboration with the Office of Development and where and what this should be labeled as.
Yeah, I think I'll say nobody really likes surprises. Nobody likes bad surprises. I'm sure about that. And this can be the type of thing that once it starts to go down one road, if it's incorrect, it becomes a bad surprise to one group or another. It takes a lot of manpower, a lot of man hours to reverse one of these if it's been filed as a gift and it's actually a sponsored project. We are really concerned about getting this right on the forefront, but primarily for auditing purposes. We really don't want to have that conversation. And we really want to make sure that, gift funds are being applied as gifts and true sponsored project endeavors are getting the proper oversight and the proper compliance checks that they need.
It's less difficult to go from a sponsored project to a gift, though. I will say it's much easier for us to give it over when we can.
That's true, but then we see many more sponsored projects than we do gifts. So less difficult to go from a sponsored project to a gift, but if it's wrong, it's probably going to be filed as a gift and we're going to have to backtrack.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so a couple of examples. We had a sponsor who gave complimentary funding for an NIH project whose funding was reduced. We've seen that, I don't know how many different times. It happens quite often. The sponsor was a foundation. No terms and conditions were provided. We were basically given free will, if you will. There were, other than it was being given as a compliment to this specific project. So it was for a specific project. It wasn't for research in general or for anything like that. Previously, the PI, along with the sponsor's parent company. So the sponsor itself was a foundation. The parent company was an industry. They co-invented a product that was being used in that sponsored project. Gift or grant. It was considered a gift. Now we did have to go through COI because of the potential conflict of the sponsor giving that the parent company of this sponsor, they co-invented a device that was being used.
All right, case study number 2. So we had a sponsor who was also an individual who wanted to write a personal check for a large sum of money for a very specific clinical trial to a department. The sponsor also wanted to be the PI on the project. The sponsor had a 10% or 10% FTE. They were part-time at UNC, and they were full-time at an industry position. The sponsor also indicated that the results were going to be published down the line. Is this a gift or a grant? It actually, so it's a bit of a trick question. Yeah, this depended heavily on several things. I will say it didn't go through for several reasons. It didn't go through, but had it gone through, it would have been a grant but it would have had to be heavily revised. This wouldn't have cleared COI at all. But it would have been a grant had it gone through and had we made the revisions that were necessary.
Here's just a few policy web resources. That gift versus sponsored project is that website I was mentioning that we intend to update in the future. You can see it was updated last, it's 2017. So we intend to update it with some more updated information and then a little bit more comprehensive information. Giving.UNC is the Office of Development's general website, and then of course sponsored programs. Again, we wanted to let you know that that checklist tool is coming soon, and we hope to have it out as a tool sometime in the nearest future.
Soonish.
Soonish.
Yeah.
All right, this time we open it up for any questions or discussions. Anybody have any weird, funky little things?
Just to clarify, if the industry wants to give money, they can give money to a specific project as long as they don't dictate what happens to the money and funds after they do the project.
Correct.
Yes.
It's considered a restricted gift.
Yeah, so they can say, hey, I'm giving $100,000, but you ended up only needing $80,000. The PI can see what to do with the remaining 2,000
Yes.
or whatever it is.
Yes.
They cannot tell us what to do with that money. Now they can gift it to that particular project, but they cannot put restrictions on that.
And you were talking, sounds like money. What about instrumentation or equipment?
Tangible property is the same. They cannot give us restrictions on that type of equipment,
Right.
tangible, intangible.
Yeah.
That would still be considered a gift as long as that is true.
Yeah, as long as there's no strings attached, it's, and it's really a donation and they don't really want to know like anything specific about what we're using that equipment for or how it's performing or anything like that beyond the we're getting a lot of good use out of it. Thank you very much. Then it's a gift.
But it is considered an asset for the value of $5,000.
That is true. Khadijah.
So are there any special concerns when you have an entity that is gifting and granting like projects? I had one several years ago, and I hope it's not the messy one y'all are talking about. Where there was a gift involved and it was really nice and everybody was in love and it was just this great kumbaya relationship. Then we got to the grant part or to the contract part, and there was, at least on my end, there was this expectation that we were going to kind of just keep that flow going, that we were just going to do that. And so I guess the question becomes, when you have an entity that's contracting with you, but also gifting you, and there's a lot of special feelings involved, are there things to watch out for, or traps, or loopholes, or
it all comes down to that terms and conditions. So, I mean, you can have an entity that you're contracting with, right? And that same entity in another instance gift you. It just depends on the terms and conditions. If they're saying, hey, we have this contract with you, we're paying you this to get this back. But we're feeling very philanthropic right now. And we're going to give you 50,000 because we're really nice people. Do what you want.
I think in the scenario I had, I think the gift preceded the contract.
Mhm.
And so I think that, at least in my situation, I got the feeling that there was an expectation.
Like a bribery?
of the Contract, that we would continue this love.
Relationship.
That we had, the kumbaya thing we had going on. I think the gift predated the contract, and so I felt like there was this expectation with you don't love us anymore, you're not going to cop us this term and condition in our contract. So I guess that's kind of where I was going if you saw that kind of situation. But that one I transferred to someone above my pay grade, so somebody getting paid more money than me took that one. Because I think there was going to be some hearts that got broken on that one.
Yeah, sometimes it can be compartmentalizing, right? And trying to save relationships, but it really comes down to business and comes down to terms and conditions and whether there are strings attached. And we have to follow our own compliance and policies. Yeah, no, I don't know if we do. We don't see many gifts in sponsored projects. We do see here a couple. Usually they are going to the appropriate person. Usually we see the things that are not clear. Right? Is this a gift or is that a sponsored project? Sometimes we get the gifts coming back to us because of a single term, a single word in a term. And then it comes back to us. So it's usually flowing this way and not flowing that way.
But that is a really big special consideration
Yeah.
where we want you to let us know about
Probably
that
a
because,
COI
yeah.
might want to be considered. Letting them in, because a lot of times if gifts are coming in, COI is not involved because it's really a sponsored project. So sometimes we'll give courtesy notifications to COI to say, hey, are we good here?
Yeah, University Council got involved with mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I washed my hands. with it
Yeah.
because there was,
A lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of interaction.
I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what they paid him for.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're at time.
Yep, that's our time. So
Thank
just
you.
wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. And please remember to complete the post-session survey again, either using the QR code or the link found on our website. Thank you all and see you at the next session.